I just want to get your thoughts on this. I mean, why Dylan's friends, calling up one of Dylan's friends to the stand, do you think these witnesses were effective?
I think they were effective in rebutting the defense argument in this case that Dylan just stepped out and wandered off. Powerful testimony, as was the video surveillance, both at the airport and at the Walmart.
And what was your take on Dylan's mother's testimony? Did it help the prosecution in pinning Mark Redwine as the murderer?
I think it did. It was heartbreaking to hear a mother talk about her son who's been killed, and not just murdered by his father. I mean, just incredibly sad case. I mean, all the cases we cover on Law and Crime are sad, but this one's particularly sad. Whenever you're dealing with a young child who's been killed, it's really highly unusual and improper. These speaking objections just in general, and this judge needs to get control of the courtroom. You know, it's not appropriate for jurors to be hearing this back and forth between the attorneys, and it's also unprofessional. So hopefully we see less of this going forward and more actual evidence and testimony.
And Neama, this witness has just concluded her testimony. I want to get your thoughts to both of you. What did you make of this witness?
You know, personally, Dan, I wish the state got her on and off a little bit faster. They went down this route with respect to prior statements, and I know a lot of this came out during cross-examination, but really her entire purpose was to show that Mark was a violent individual, someone that was unhinged. There was this episode that they discussed where essentially he threatened his ex-wife and her friends. So, you know, get her in and out, move the case forward, because really went down a couple tangents that probably at least the state didn't want to go down.
What could we expect to hear from an investigator in a case like this?
Yeah, I love federal prosecutors, and I'm a former federal prosecutor. As a former federal prosecutor, I love federal agents in a case like this. And this is really where the meat and potatoes are, because let's be real, you know, the Walmart video, the airport video, the mom and her friend, this is the key evidence in the case. The victim's blood was found in the defendant's living room, all over the living room, the coffee table, in the carpet. I mean, that's what I expect to hear from this agent. And most of the time, these agents have advanced degrees. Many of them are attorneys, so I expect a very polished witness, someone who's used to testifying. And it's not uncommon in these missing children cases for local law enforcement to get the feds involved. So I'm expecting him to be a very good witness for the prosecution.
Your thoughts on hearing from the investigator thus far?
Yeah, it's to lay foundation for the crime scene. And again, the defense came after him on cross-examination and say, well, isn't it true I don't know, it was a Nerf gun or a Nerf ball or something wasn't there, and the couch was not exactly where you said it was. But really, none of this matters, right? What matters is where was the blood, where did the cadaver dogs hit, you know, that type of physical evidence. That's what's going to influence this jury and get a guilty conviction for the prosecution, not these minor nits that the defense is coming after. I wish I were more prepared, got some of this out earlier. And you know that on every witness, the defense has come out with the following: why don't you tell law enforcement back in 2000? Why don't you tell them back in the 80s? So those types of questions are coming. You want to get those out on direct. One thing I like to do as a former prosecutor, I used to tell all of my witnesses, forget everything else I say during these prep sessions. The most important thing to do is tell the truth. So that way, when they come and they testify and they say, hey, well, what did Neama tell you, or what did John Lewin tell you? They'll say, oh, they told me to tell the truth, and jurors love that.
Neama, what are your thoughts? I mean, what you're hearing here, especially this idea, this question about the film, All Good Things.
Well, this line of questioning is very effective to the extent it talks about Newman changing her story. That's the last thing you want if you're the prosecutor. You have a witness that says that, Susan Berman said X, and then all of a sudden she says, no, that didn't happen. That's not good for the state at all. So the defense keeps scoring points against this particular witness, though again, I still think she's credible. I agree with Krista there, but again, they're chipping away and doing so very effectively.
Is there a sense of badgering the witness, or sort of do you feel like his tone is appropriate here, Neama?
I think it is appropriate. You have that sort of Southern charm. Both of them are going back and forth. I mean, compare and contrast the witness in the Colorado case that we talked about, very sort of hostile and combative. We're not seeing any of that here. Everyone's being professional and polite. So even though he is going after her, I think it's far from badgering, notwithstanding the argumentative objections from John Lewin, the deputy district attorney.
To get your thoughts on this, what are the main takeaways from this testimony?
This is a circumstantial case, so the prosecution has to build it over time, piece by piece, puzzle piece by puzzle piece. That's why it's going to take so long, because again, there's not a whole lot of direct evidence. We have some admissions that Bob Durst made during the filming of The Jinx. We have the cadaver letter. But other than that, this is a very different case compared to the other ones that we've covered here on Law and Crime. So, this particular witness, Newman, she fits one of those important pieces of the puzzle, because we're able to get Susan Berman's statements out through this witness. So I liked her testimony. I thought she was honest. Who talks about drug use, especially when they're a minor, as much as she did? So I liked her, although I agree with Krista. The defense did certainly score some points during cross-examination, but I think she did a good job holding her own. She was very poised, and I think she came across as quite clever.
Entered as evidence. Is that unusual, or what have you seen?
It is unusual. Usually with these different types of demonstratives, you want to either get a stipulation from opposing counsel or clear them with the court well before the witness testifies, because the last thing you want is to kind of go through this back and forth on exhibits that are unique exhibits in front of the jury. Yeah, I know we're short of time, but Dan, I agree with Krista here. I'm a nerd, and jurors love this type of physical evidence. We've all watched CSI, so this is what they expect in these types of cases.
Okay.
So.